Coffee grounds crusted beneath my fingernails when the text lit up my wife's phone. I can still taste you. No exclamation points, just casual devastation. Most men would scream. I just felt a cold, familiar hum in my jaw. The guy wanted to fight. He just didn't know who. 14 years of marriage doesn't end with a gunshot. It ends with the smell of cheap eucalyptus body wash on your wife's collarbone when she leans over the kitchen island to grab her keys. I didn't say anything the first time I smelled it, or the second. I'm a man who spent a decade and a half learning how to sit perfectly still in environments that actively wanted me dead. Sitting still in a suburban kitchen in Ohio while my wife lied to my face was just a different application of the same skill set. Her name is Claire. We met when I was fresh out of Coronado, still bleeding ambition and misplaced patriotism. Back then, she liked the uniform. She liked the idea of me. But the reality of a Navy SEAL isn't movie hero glamour. It's 6-month deployments, returning home with a hollow stare, waking up at 3 in the morning because the refrigerator ice maker sounded like mortar fire. By the time I took my discharge and traded a tactical vest for a polo shirt and a clipboard selling commercial HVAC systems, whatever she loved about me had dried up. I became boring, a ghost haunting our living room. I was at the sink scrubbing grease off a frying pan. The water was scalding, turning the skin of my knuckles a bright raw pink. Her phone sat on the marble counter, vibrating against the stone. A text. Then a voice note. Claire was upstairs in the shower. I could hear the pipes groaning, a sound I'd meant to fix for 3 months. I dried my hands on a dish towel. It smelled like mildew. Everything in the house felt slightly damp, slightly rotting. I tapped the screen. She hadn't locked it. A voice spilled out of the tiny speaker. It was thick, aggressively confident, the kind of voice that belonged to a guy who drank protein shakes out of plastic gallon jugs. Babe, you left your sports bra in my locker. Tell your sad sack husband you're working late tomorrow. We need to go over your ground game. A wet, breathy chuckle followed. I didn't shatter the phone. I didn't punch the drywall. I just felt a profound, exhausting heaviness settle behind my eyes. My left knee, the one that caught shrapnel in Fallujah, gave a sympathetic throb. When Claire came downstairs, wrapped in a terry cloth robe, she looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in maybe a year. She saw the phone sitting exactly where she'd left it, but she saw my posture too. Shoulders dropped, weight shifted to the balls of my feet, a resting stance I hadn't used since my last rotation. You listened to it, she said. Her voice wasn't trembling. There was a defiant edge to it, which surprised me. Eucalyptus, I said, my voice sounding like it was coming from someone else. That's what you smell like now. She crossed her arms, pulling the robe tighter. The skin around her eyes was red, completely devoid of makeup. His name is Derek. He owns the MMA gym downtown, the one I've been going to for kickboxing. Right, kickboxing. Don't look at me like that, Cole, she snapped, a sudden jagged anger flaring in her chest. Don't you dare stand there with that dead, flat look on your face. You've been gone for 5 years, not physically, but you're not here. You come home, you eat, you stare at the wall, you sleep. You're a corpse. So yeah, I've been sleeping with a strip mall ninja. She flinched. Good. He makes me feel alive. He actually looks at me. She paused, her breathing shallow. I want a divorce. We're going to be together. I looked around the kitchen. The stainless steel fridge with its smudged fingerprints, the stack of unopened mail, the ceramic bowl full of browning bananas. I realized, with a sudden, sharp clarity, that I didn't care. The love had been bled out of us by 1,000 silent dinners. What I felt wasn't heartbreak. It was a cold, metallic insult. It was a territory dispute. Okay, I said. Claire blinked. Her defiance faltered, replaced by confusion, then a strange insulted disgust. That's it? Okay? I tell you I'm leaving you for another man, and you don't even care. Do you want me to scream, Claire? Break dishes? I walked past her, the scent of eucalyptus thick and cloying in my nose. I'll pack a bag. I'm staying at the Motel 6 off Interstate 80. Have your lawyer draft the papers. I left her standing there. I packed a duffel bag with 5 shirts, 3 pairs of jeans, my shaving kit, and a lockbox containing my service records and a rusted KA bar knife I hadn't sharpened in 6 years. I was pulling out of the driveway when my phone rang. Unknown number. I hit accept, putting it on speaker as the windshield wipers dragged across the glass, smearing rain and pollen. Cole? The voice was loud, bouncing around the cab of my truck, the protein shake voice. Derek speaking. This is Derek. Claire called me. She's crying. He paused, waiting for me to react. When I didn't, he pushed harder, his tone dropping an octave to sound more imposing. You think you can just walk out on her like that? Leave her with the mess. You're a coward. I merged onto the highway. The tires hissed against the wet asphalt. She asked for a divorce, Derek. I'm obliging. You won the prize. Congratulations. Don't disrespect her, he barked. You need to come down to my gym. We're going to sort out this house situation face to face. You're not taking half her equity, you lazy piece of garbage. Come down here, unless you're too scared to face a real man. I looked at the dashboard clock. 4:15 p.m. I had nothing but time. The cold hum in my jaw grew louder, vibrating against my teeth. Give me the address, I said. Derek's gym was wedged between a discount mattress store and a glowing, neon-lit vape shop. The sign above the door read Apex Predator Martial Arts in sharp, aggressively angular red letters. I pushed the glass door. The smell hit me immediately. A sickening blend of bleach, dried sweat, and the rubbery off-gassing of cheap neoprene mats. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly pale hue over the warehouse space. Heavy bags hung from steel chains, swinging gently. In the center of the room, on a raised blue mat, was Derek. He was younger than I expected, maybe late 20s. He had the physique of a guy who spent more time staring at his own abs in the mirror than doing functional cardio. Broad shoulders, a tapered waist, skin shiny with spray tan, and fresh sweat. He wore an overly tight rash guard and gi pants, a worn black belt cinched around his waist. He was holding pads for a scrawny teenager, barking commands. Hips! Turn your hips! Snap it! I walked over to the edge of the mat. My work boots left dull, dirty scuffs on the pristine blue vinyl. Derek caught sight of me. He stopped the drill, patting the kid on the shoulder, and swaggered over. He walked with that exaggerated, wide lat stroll, chest puffed out, arms hanging away from his sides like he was carrying 2 invisible watermelons. Cole, I presume? He said, looking down his nose at me. He had a couple of inches on my 5'10" frame, but his center of gravity was high. He stood too tall, too rigid. I'm here, I said, keeping my hands resting loosely in the pockets of my flannel jacket. What do you want to say to me that you couldn't say over the phone? A few of the other gym members, mostly guys with cauliflower ears and tribal tattoos, stopped what they were doing and drifted closer. Derek was playing to an audience. Claire deserves the house, Derek said loudly, making sure the echo bounced off the metal ceiling. She put the down payment down. You've been coasting on her paycheck since you quit whatever loser sales job you had. You sign it all over to her. I sell HVAC, I corrected quietly. And I pay the mortgage. Has she been telling you I don't work? Derek scoffed, crossing his muscular arms. I don't care what you do. I know what you are. You're a weak, pathetic man who couldn't keep his wife satisfied. Now you're trying to financially abuse her. I watched his throat as he spoke, the way his carotid artery pulsed just beneath the skin. I mapped the distance between us. 2 feet, a fraction of a second. I could drop my weight, drive my palm into the hinge of his jaw, and shatter his mandible before his brain even registered the movement. The thought didn't bring me joy. It felt like opening a dusty, toxic box I'd sworn to keep padlocked in the basement of my mind. The house gets sold. We split it 50-50, that's the law, Derek, I said, turning away. Take care of her. She likes her coffee black, by the way. Don't put sugar in it. She hates that. I took one step toward the door before a heavy hand clamped down on my shoulder. I didn't say you were dismissed, Derek hissed. My body reacted before my conscious mind did. The instinct was pure, unadulterated muscle memory. I didn't tense up. I simply rotated my shoulder, sinking my hips to break his grip, and pivoted, squaring off with him. I didn't raise my hands. I just stared into his eyes. For a fraction of a second, the bravado in Derek's face flickered. He felt the shift in the air. He felt the absolute, horrifying absence of fear in the man standing in front of him. But his audience was watching. His ego was a fragile, bloated thing, and it couldn't let him back down. You think you're tough? Derek sneered, recovering his smirk. He bounced on his toes. You want to settle this right now? Put on some gloves, 5 minutes on the mat. I don't fight for sport, I said softly. You don't fight at all, Derek laughed, looking back at his buddies. A few of them chuckled. Tell you what, Friday night, we have an open mat exhibition here. Claire's coming. You show up, we do 1 round. If you survive 5 minutes with me, without tapping or getting knocked out, I'll pay her half of the equity myself, out of my business account. I'll buy you out. You don't show up, or you quit, you sign the papers, and walk away with nothing. It was a stupid, legally unenforceable bet, born of pure testosterone and cheap movies. But looking at Derek, smelling his cheap cologne, mixed with the sterile stench of mat cleaner, I felt a familiar dark sludge pump into my veins. The utter disrespect, the sheer towering arrogance of a man who thought violence was a game, played on soft foam. He didn't know about the mud in Helmand Province. He didn't know what it smelled like when a man's bowels empty after you crush his windpipe in a dark alley in Fallujah. To Derek, fighting was points and tapping out. To me, it was surviving. I looked at him. I let my eyes trace the perfect, unscarred line of his jaw. Friday, I said. My voice was a gravelly rasp. I don't need gloves. I turned and walked out the glass doors, stepping into the cold rain. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. The animal was awake, and it was hungry. Room 114 at the Motel 6 smelled like a decade of stale Pall Malls, frantically masked by industrial pine cleaner. I sat on the edge of a mattress that sagged heavily in the middle, staring down at my work boots. The left one slipped off easily. The right one required me to manually lift my thigh with both hands to ease the angle on my knee. I peeled off my socks and looked at my own hands in the sickly yellow light of the bedside lamp. The knuckles were thick, calloused from stripping copper wire and carrying 50-pound bags of rock salt, but scarred from older, uglier work. Jagged white lines of split skin and hurried field sutures crisscrossed the backs of my hands. My right knee throbbed in time with my pulse, a dull, rhythmic ache radiating from the microscopic shrapnel fragments still embedded in the cartilage. I walked into the cramped bathroom, turning the plastic knob on the sink. The water sputtered out violently, brown with rust for 3 seconds before running clear. I cupped my hands, drank from the tap, and popped 4 ibuprofen dry. Swallowing them felt like swallowing gravel. I was 38 years old. I hadn't been in a physical altercation since my deployment to Ramadi ended in a medevac helicopter. My body was a depreciating piece of machinery running on fumes and anti-inflammatories. I was heavy, I was rusty, and I was deeply, thoroughly exhausted. I walked back into the main room and dragged a plastic chair to the window, parting the heavy, nicotine-stained curtains just enough to watch the rain hit the asphalt in the parking lot. The neon sign outside buzzed, a constant electric mosquito. I wasn't angry. That was the strangest part. When a man finds out his wife is sleeping with a spray-tanned kickboxing instructor, the script dictates rage, screaming, broken glass, tequila. But I just felt empty, a cold, cavernous void where the anxiety of my failing marriage used to live. For 5 years, I'd walked on eggshells around Claire, trying to be the docile, boring suburban husband she wanted after complaining the military made me too rigid. I had shrunk myself to fit into a commercial HVAC polo shirt, and she hated me for it anyway. My phone vibrated against the cheap laminate nightstand, startling a water bug that was navigating the baseboard. Claire's name lit up the cracked glass. I let it buzz 4 times, listening to the plastic shell rattle against the wood before I finally dragged my thumb across the screen. "What?" I said. It wasn't a question. "You're not actually going down there tomorrow, are you?" Her voice was thin, pinched tight with an irritation I knew intimately. It was the exact tone she used when I forgot to rinse my coffee mug or left my work boots by the front door. I leaned my head against the cold glass of the motel window. "I thought you wanted the house, Claire." "I do, but this is ridiculous, Cole." I heard the sharp intake of her breath, the rustle of fabric. She was pacing. "Please tell me you're not going to embarrass both of us over some midlife crisis macho stunt. You think fighting him is going to win me back? It's pathetic." A hollow, scraping laugh worked its way out of my chest. It felt foreign in my throat. "I don't want you back, Claire. The house gets sold. We split the equity. Derek made a counteroffer. I'm just showing up for a business meeting." "He is going to hurt you," she snapped, dropping the pretense of annoyance for a brief flash of something sharper. But it wasn't concern for my safety. "Cole, he competes. He's won amateur belts. He trains 6 days a week. You're going to get your teeth knocked out. And then I'm going to have to deal with the fallout. I'm going to have to pay your dental bills out of our joint account before we dissolve it. Just don't show up." He'll take the win. His ego will be satisfied, and we can just use the lawyers. She was worried about the inconvenience of my bleeding. She was worried about the math. "Tell him I don't wear gloves," I said quietly. "You are out of your mind." "I'll see you at 7, Claire." I hung up, tossing the phone onto the unmade bed. The silence in the room rushed back in, heavy and damp. I stood up and moved to the center of the faded carpet. I closed my eyes, planted my feet shoulder-width apart, and sank into a slow, deep squat. The joints in my hips and knees crackled like dry twigs, snapping in a quiet forest. I didn't need a training montage. I didn't need to hit heavy bags, run miles in the rain, or listen to motivational speeches. In my previous life, violence wasn't a sport you conditioned for. It wasn't about rounds or points or showing off for your girlfriend. It was a toggle switch. You were either a civilian, bound by the fragile social contract of restraint and empathy, or you were a weapon. For 5 years, I'd kept that switch taped firmly in the off position. I'd buried the man I was in the desert under a mountain of mundane civilian routines. But standing in that motel room, feeling the ache in my bones and the cold hum vibrating in my jaw, I reached into the dark and ripped the tape away. The switch flipped. The rust flaked off. I opened my eyes, and the tired HVAC salesman was gone. Friday night, the air inside Apex Predator was thick with humidity, Axe body spray, and the sour tang of nervous sweat. The gym was packed. The open mat exhibition drew a crowd of gym regulars, local tough guys, and a few girlfriends holding paper cups of cheap beer. Fluorescent lights hammered down on the center mat, where a few pairs of guys were rolling in jiu-jitsu drills, slapping the vinyl and breathing in heavy rhythmic huffs. I walked through the double glass doors wearing a washed-out gray t-shirt, plain black sweatpants, and bare feet. No hand wraps, no mouthpiece. I walked with a slight limp, favoring my right leg just enough to take the pressure off the bad joint. The low murmur of the crowd died down as people noticed me. I didn't fit in. I didn't have cauliflower ears or a single tribal tattoo. I looked exactly like what I was, a tired suburban husband who sold air conditioners. Derek was already on the main mat, pacing like a caged tiger. He wore custom black and red board shorts with his nickname, the Reaper, stitched across the back in Gothic lettering. His wrists were taped bright red. When he saw me, a masked, predatory grin stretched across his face. Claire was standing near the front desk holding a bottled water. She wore a tight black top I'd never seen before. When our eyes met, she looked away first, her face flushing with a mix of shame and annoyance. "Well, well, well," Derek announced, his voice carrying over the thump of the hip-hop track playing from a corner boombox. He clapped his padded hands together. He was wearing standard 4-ounce MMA gloves. He actually showed up. Give the man a hand for having a pulse, folks. A few scattered, mocking claps echoed in the room. I walked onto the blue mat, feeling the cool, slightly sticky texture of the vinyl against my bare soles. I stopped in the center, 10 feet from Derek. 5 minutes, Derek said to a guy with a stopwatch standing on the edge of the mat. He looked back at me. "You ready to earn that equity, old man? Or do you want to tap now and save yourself the dental work?" "Start the clock," I said. The guy with the stopwatch yelled, "Time!" Derek didn't waste a second. He closed the distance fast, bouncing lightly on the balls of his feet, his hands up in a textbook guard. He threw a lightning-fast jab to test my reflexes. I didn't move my head. The padded leather caught me flush on the left cheekbone. A sharp, electric sting flared across my face. My head snapped back slightly. The crowd let out an ooh of collective excitement. I tasted the instant metallic tang of copper as my inner lip pressed against my teeth. Derek smirked, circling to my right. He threw a low leg kick, his shin slapping hard against my left thigh. The pain was immediate, a deep muscle bruise blossoming under the sweatpants. He was fast. He was conditioned. If this were a point fighting match, I would have been down 2 rounds already. He stepped in for a 1-2 combination, aiming to put my lights out early and look good for Claire. That was when I flipped the switch. I didn't block his right cross. I slipped my head offline just enough that the glove grazed my ear, and I stepped into him, completely collapsing the distance. In sport fighting, you manage distance to strike. In close quarters combat, you eliminate distance to destroy structure. I drove the crown of my head directly into the soft tissue under his chin. At the exact same time, my right hand shot out, open-palmed, gripping his trachea, not to choke, but to control the neck, while my left hand locked onto his right tricep, wrenching his arm across his own center line. Derek choked on a breath, his eyes widening in sudden, panicked confusion. This wasn't a boxing clinch. This was an assault.